share it with those who are unable to attend today. Okay. Okay, sorry about that. All right, so today's placement information session is a very general information session, just to go through a couple of key things with regards to your placement. So it's really aimed for students who are about to start the search for placement approaching. Sorry, Samantha, can I ask you to mute? There's a bit of background noise coming through. It's just everyone check that your microphone's on mute, please. Thank you.
Is that better?
So there's a mute button. If you can just click the mute button. If you can find it somewhere there. Okay. I'll just ask everyone also just to refrain from asking questions throughout the session and leave them towards the end, just because throughout I'm sure a lot of your questions will be answered as we move through the slides. So if you have any questions, just write them down and there'll be time for that at the end. Okay, so firstly, when do you do placement? Placement is sequenced in the final year of your studies. So after you've studied all of the theory, you've done most of the units, placement should be at the very end of your degree. So on the screen there, we've got there the minimum requirements. So for the undergraduate courses, it's 16 units. For the Graduate Diploma of Counselling, it's all first 6-year units, and for the Masters, it's all 8 first-year units. In your courses, there are a couple of electives that are highly considered with some of our agencies. With some of the agencies, it's actually a requirement that students complete certain units. So if you haven't chosen your electives or not sure what to do, we highly recommend doing group work, alcohol and other drugs, and the mental health units. There's different names in the different courses, but they're the main electives that we look for. Okay, your placement requirements. Now, in all of your courses, there are 2 placement units. So most of it is called placement and supervision 1 or 2. Now, I need to make clear that it is 1 placement across both of those units. So I know a lot of students have thought that there were 2 placements, but it's just 1 placement across both units. It's a minimum, depending on your course, between 200 to 250 hours, but the hours is just the minimum requirement. The main key thing you need to know is you need to be on placement for a minimum of 1 to 2 days a week across those 2 terms. And you should be starting your placement at least 2 weeks prior to the term starting. So, for example, if you wanted to do start a placement for term 2, you should start 2 weeks before it starts, term 2 starting, and continuing 1 or 2 days a week until the end of term 3. So you'd be enrolled in your placement supervision 1 unit in term 2 and your second unit in term 3. And you're on placement 1 to 2 days a week across both those 2 terms. So it's normally a period of 7 to 9 months, depending on which 2 terms. For example, if you did term 3 and term 1, that's a longer period because of the summer break. And then for most agencies, you'll be on placement throughout that break, just because the client work, the groups, all of that is still occurring. And so all students will be expected to remain on placement throughout the break. Now, for the counselling courses, there are a minimum of 40 to 80 hours of counselling required in your course, and that's only for counselling. So the Bachelor of Applied Social Science students, you are not to be counselling while on placement. You haven't received the specific training for counselling, and you're also not insured for counselling while on placement. So for Bachelor of Applied Social Science students, while you're on placement, you can be doing anything else. case management, intake, support work, social work, anything else except for counselling. Okay. So your placement requirements, I've just mentioned it before, so it's really important that you're on placement throughout the duration of both the terms of your placement and supervision units, and you need to be commencing your placement at least 2 weeks before term starts. Oh, I'm sorry, the other thing is that it has to be consecutive terms. So you can't be enrolled in one unit, placement supervision 1 in one term, have a break and then do the other unit another term. It has to be in consecutive terms because you're on one placement throughout both those 2 terms. Okay, so what can't you do for placement? You can't do Lifeline or similar phone-based services. Actually, with Lifeline, some branches have a face-to-face program where you're working with clients directly face-to-face. That's okay. But most of them is telephone counselling, and that doesn't meet your course requirements. You can't be working with under 18s. There are some exceptions for approved high schools that we have, especially in Melbourne. So there are some exceptions where the counselling is structured, it's well supervised. But the general rule is no work with under 18s. And the reason for that is working with children or adolescents or minors, it's really high risk when you're working with children because they could bring up any issue. That there's mandatory reporting to be considered. There's a lot of things there, and because you're all students, this is your first time working in the field, there is no work to be involved with under 18s. So that's just really important for you to remember. Agencies that do not allow counselling. So if you're speaking to an agency and they say, no, we don't have counselling or do not allow it, no placements are to be done there. Or any work with clients who have severe mental health conditions. So I'm talking about schizophrenia, borderline personality disorder, those kind of conditions. So no work with severe mental health conditions. General mental health, anxiety, things like that, that's fine, but not severe mental health conditions. And working with couples or family counselling. So of course you can do relationship counselling when you're working one-on-one with clients, where it's just you and the client. But to work with a couple when there's 2 in the room and yourself, that's a real skill to be able to manage that kind of session and those dynamics between a couple or with a family where there's a mum and dad and children. So when you're on placement, you're just looking to work one-on-one to begin with for the duration of your placement. And then, of course, you can't do placements that are shorter than 2 terms unless it's pre-approved. Okay, Sonia online. Most of you should have already received an email. If you haven't received it yet, that's most likely because you're way too early in your course for the email. We send out the email for undergraduate students when you enroll in your 8th unit and for postgraduate students when you're enrolled in your 3rd unit. So Sonia is the placement management system that we use for everything to do for your placement. So for students who are searching for placement, all the information you need to know is in there, pre-placement. And then also when you're on placement, everything will be in Sonia as well, including all the forms you need to fill out. So when you're enrolled in your 8th or your 3rd unit, you'll get an email with a link to Sonia, including your login details and what you need to know. That indicates that it's the time to start thinking about placement. You won't be ready or eligible for placement at that time, but we give you the access to Sonia about 6 months before we think you're ready for placement. So you can start thinking about what it is you want to do, where you want to go, getting your resume ready, your criminal record check. If you want to consider volunteering, that would be a good time too. So we give that access really early so you can start thinking about those things. How do I find a placement? So all students are responsible for finding their own placement. We do have a placement team here at ACAP, but our job is to support you, advise and guide you in finding your own placement. So there's hundreds of students at ACAP, actually, sorry, thousands, but we have about just over 100 undertaking a placement each term. And that's a lot of work for us to be able to do and coordinate and manage all of that. And so it's up to each student to find their own placement. We have a number of resources available for all students, available in Sonia. When you log into Sonia, there is a tab called Placements, and then there's a button called Review. In there is a list of all the agencies we've ever worked with before. But I want you to know that it's not an up-to-date database. Unfortunately, there's changes occurring every day. Agencies are moving, supervisors leaving, phone numbers changing, all sorts of things happening. So often when you're contacting agencies through that list, something would have changed. We would appreciate it if you can send us an email to let us know so we can update the information for the next student. But don't rely on that database as your single source. It's recommended that you Google, you do your own searches, your own networking, all of that, so that you've got other resources and other avenues available there. We also offer placement opportunities at the start of each term. So every student who has been given access to Sonia would have already received an email for placement opportunities each term. Around about week 4 or week 5 of each term, any opportunities that we have with the agencies we work with regularly, we send out an email to all the students with all of those opportunities, including an application form. So for example, in term 2, we had 55 opportunities available in our agencies that we work with regularly. Applications had just closed on Sunday. But because there's only 55 opportunities, it's not enough for the amount of placements that are needed. So do not rely on those opportunities. They're just one of the options where students can get a placement. And if you apply for any of those opportunities, you should still be making your own inquiries and making your own phone calls and tapping into your own networks. That is just one of the avenues in which students are placed. And it can take up to 6 months to secure a placement. So plan ahead. And like I said before, there's a few steps there with your resume, your clearance, a few things. And often when you're calling agencies, they'll say they've currently got a student, maybe we consider you in 3 months or 5 months' time. So make sure you plan well ahead, you're well prepared, well in advance. Volunteering, it's the key to a successful placement. A lot of agencies, when they're looking at resumes, they look at whether you've had any experience in the past, if you've volunteered or worked or had any type of experience. So if you're early in your course, now would be the time to start looking at volunteering. Even if you're doing 4 hours a week, it is some experience that the agencies will consider. If you're thinking about volunteering, a few things to think about is to look at an agency where you would like to do your placement or where you would like to work. A lot of students, where they're volunteering, that ends up to a placement for them. So think about where it is you want to do your placement or where you want your career to be after graduating, and aim to get volunteering in that area. There's a link on the ACAP website that takes you to volunteering opportunities. So anything that comes through to us, we advertise it on the ACAP website. How to contact us. So again, on the placement website, there is a list of all the placement staff contacts. In each campus, there are placement staff in Sydney, Brisbane, Melbourne, and Adelaide, and all of our contact details are there. But before contacting any of us, I recommend you go through the information in Sonia first, read through everything first, and then if you have any questions, give us a call or send us an email. So we're up to questions now, but before we get to questions, I just want to quickly take you through to Sonia, just so I can show you how it looks, the information, the way it's laid out. Sorry, it's not letting me do it at the moment. No, I just had it before starting the webinar. Sorry, just a moment and it should get there. Can you all still see my screen, or has it changed, or has it gone blank? No.
Yeah.
It's gone black.
It's gone black? Okay.
The black square over the top of your original screen.
All right, thank you. I'll just roll it across. Okay, let me just try sharing again and okay, can you see the screen now?
Yep.
Welcome to Sonia. Okay, so when you're on this page, there are a couple of tabs across the top here. Home, this is the home page, placements, forms, my details, history, documents, and calendar. So the main two tabs you will use is placements and forms. The forms is more for when you've found a placement, you'll fill in an electronic form in the forms tab. This form here, student placement registration. And then when you're on placement, this area will update with all of the forms you need for when you're on placement, your learning contract, mid-placement review, all of those type of forms. The other tab over here is placements or placements. At the moment, you will all be in a pre-placement group over here. When you're on placement, this again will update and will have student placement and then for your course. So when you've got this space here, you just go to this little red details button here, click on that, and it will refresh with all the information. So here we've got everything you need to know for placement, all the information I've gone through the webinar. And we've sectioned it off so that you can do maybe one step, go through a section per week, or if you want to do it every couple of days, or whatever, however you want to structure it. So step one, your placement requirements. So a little bit about what I've mentioned before and what you should be looking for on placement, how it should be structured, 1 day a week across 2 terms, counselling requirements, etc. Now, for anyone who's already working in the industry, if you're already in an agency where you could potentially do your placement, here are the forms to use to apply for using your workplace for placement. Step 2, the basics of placement, a little bit more detail about what I've already gone through, some important policies there. understanding supervision, so the supervision units you're enrolling to while you're on placement, what that's about and how it works. Step 4, applying for your criminal record and working with children check, doing your resume. Step 6 through to the accessing the ACAP placement agency information, and included there we've got a couple of good links for you to search when you're searching for agencies. And then finally, once you've got a placement, how to register and confirm your placement. So that's the information pre-placement. This space here will change once you're on placement, and there will be a lot of important information of what you need to know when you're on placement. So a lot of students think once they've got their placement, they don't go back into Sonia, even though we direct you back to Sonia, but I think a lot of students miss it. So it's important to remember that when you're on placement, you come back to this space, as there'll be different information there for what you need to know when you're on placement. Okay, so that's all I wanted to share with you then, and we'll go through for questions now. So does anyone have any questions?
Yes, my case is a little bit different because I live in Canada. I have sent an email to your department with the questions that I have in regards to that, because like the criminal record and that, is it a criminal record Australian one or is it a Canadian one? So there's quite a lot of things that doesn't apply to anybody else but me.
Yeah,
so it might be worth just
yeah. So for international students, your placement coordinator will be in Sydney. So his name is Aaron Connolly. He will work with you and guide you through what you need to do. But if you're doing a placement in Canada, you will need a Canadian police check. Placement requirements are the same. We'll just have to find an agency that meets those requirements. But touch base with Aaron and he'll guide you through what you need to do.
Yeah, I'm on a tourist visa here, so I don't, I don't think I can get a criminal record, Canadian criminal record.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah, there's a few things.
Right. So, are you an Australian citizen or?
I'm an Australian citizen, and I'm just living in Canada for a period of time. But I want to do my placement here because I don't want to wait till I return to Australia. If I return to Australia, I may not.
Right, okay. Well, in that case, how long have you been in Canada for? If you've been there for a year or more, then you can get a clearance from Canada.
August 2016.
16. Oh, okay. Sort of in between. You can apply for an Australian one that meets our requirements, but some of the agencies may ask you to get a Canadian one, so just be prepared for that too. Okay.
Yep. Okay.
Any other questions?
Yes, Christine, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. I have been doing my degree for 6 years, so I did my first placement under when it was the other bachelor, the social science.
Yep.
So now I have to do my second placement. I understand what the requirements are. The thing is that I've decided very early on that I wanted to work as a careers counsellor and have been working in that space over a number of workplaces. Is that still considered, is careers counselling okay?
Not as a placement, because the careers counselling, even though it's valuable, it's good experience, it's I guess there's a different approach used. So for counselling, we want you, especially as a student, because when you graduate, you would be able to apply for any type of job. So we want you to work more with general type of counselling, family, relationships, anxiety, drug and alcohol, that type of thing. But once you graduate, if career counselling is what you want to head towards, that's fine. But just for your placement, more general counselling.
Yeah. Did people struggle to find their placements? Because I've been starting to look for, those kind of opportunities, like going on Go Volunteer, and you don't hear back from people, and they don't, like, everything doesn't seem to fit the criteria. So I'm trying not to panic because I'm doing my last few subjects after 6 years of studying my degree.
Yeah. Placement can be quite difficult and challenging, and that's why we say to plan ahead and be really prepared. I guess for students who are confident in their approach and are well prepared are more successful than those that aren't. So I would recommend, and we've got all this information in Sonia, to have a spreadsheet, keep a record of all the agencies you contact, follow up with any that say call me back on Monday or send me an email, or if you didn't get through to them, you've got a record to get back to them. So if you're well organised, you understand your requirements. If you're on the phone, you're talking to them, they ask you questions, you can answer it. A lot of the time they'll ask, why do you want to do your placement here? So if you've done your research, you know what the agency does, what their services are, you can answer those questions, then you'll be successful. So that's really important, to be well prepared, understand all of your requirements, research the agency, and just to be confident in your approach. We have a script for calling agencies on what to ask and how to ask it. So a lot of students have found that helpful, and you can use that. But just be persistent. We haven't had a student who hasn't been able to graduate because they haven't been able to find a placement. We've had some who have had to defer for a term, but they all find a placement eventually. So if you just keep at it, you'll get one either via our opportunities or through your own search.
Yeah, because I mean, I currently work full-time in the space I've wanted to work in, and so it's trying to navigate a full-time job around getting the right placement.
Yeah. It is a hard.
I just want to graduate.
Yeah, I know. It is hard, especially when you are working, which makes it even more important that you're well organised and you've got a record of the agencies you're contacting, and maybe just schedule 1 hour a week to make those phone calls and send those emails, and then just keep at it, and you'll get one eventually. Okay, and who knows, you might get one on the first couple of inquiries. We've had some students who just get one immediately, and whereas some take a bit longer. So, but just be prepared for it could take longer, and so just be prepared for that.
Christy.
Yep, go ahead next.
Hi, I just want to ask one question. I graduated from Graduate Diploma of Counselling at ACAP, and now I'm doing my Master of Counselling and Psychotherapy. And so I credited from the Advanced Supervision Placement 2. I had to do the Placement 1, but actually I had to enroll this term, but I didn't look the placement, so I didn't enroll, and I had to defer the second term, but I want to enroll term 3. And how can I get this email about the Sonia online, and can I ask that from the student placement department, or is it too early?
So you've graduated from the graduate diploma, you've just gone into the masters, and you've got credit for some units. So the system probably hasn't picked you up yet because you've just come across. But if you want access early, we can arrange that for you. So just send an email to that student placement email address, and then someone will arrange that for you.
Okay, thank you, Christine.
No problems. Any other questions?
Christine.
Yes, I have another question. Oh, sorry.
No, you go. That's fine.
Just in regards to doing the placement over the 2 terms, I was kind of looking at doing my placement beginning 3rd term this year. So is the summer school term count as 2 consecutive, the 3rd term and summer school?
No, it doesn't. Unfortunately, summer school it does not count. So it's the terms only, term 1, 2, and term 3.
Okay, so my consecutive would be term 3 this year and term 1 next year.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Christine, it's Lindsay here.
Mm-hmm.
Just wanted to get clarification. I noticed that there's like you can do the placement. There's like a / group therapy situation thing going on there. So is it considered to be the placement if you were to create a group therapy and an agency was willing to take that on board?
Yes. So one-on-one counselling and group therapy counts as part of your counselling requirements. So for those of you enrolled in a counselling course, you've got between 40 to 80 hours of counselling required. We do want all students to have at least 10 hours of one-on-one counselling as part of their placement experience. So you can be in an agency where you're doing mostly group work, but we want you to at least have 10 hours one-on-one counselling. Now, when it comes to group, support groups, open sort of groups are not counted as part of those counselling hours. So it has to be a structured, closed group therapy. So you've got to have, for example, a topic each week. You're running the group, you're working towards a goal, and there's a focus for the group. So not like a support group where everyone comes in and talks about anything. There has to be a focus and you're all working towards that or around that topic each session. And normally with groups, it's either a 12-week group or a 6-week group, whereas support groups are just open-ended groups that are just continuous for clients to come and go as needed. So just make sure all the requirements for group work is in Sonia. So just check that whatever it is you're looking at meets those requirements.
Okay, cool. Because the other problem that I've been having as well is I'm not really interested in doing alcohol and drugs counselling. I was more like the girl before that was talking about career counselling. So that's a bit upsetting. You can't do that. But perhaps is there usually, or have you ever seen placements in job seeking or anything? Could there be some kind of group counselling towards confidence and releasing anxiety to do with finding work or anything like that? Would that be considered good enough to be a placement?
Yes, definitely. We have 2 agencies we work with, the ORS group and Wise Employment. We've actually just advertised some opportunities for the ORS group. And they have, I think it's 3 locations, and we've got 2 students in each of those locations. So they have groups called Back to Work with Confidence, I think it's called. And groups like that meet the requirements. So it's structured, it's working through the client's anxiety of going back to work, any struggles they're going through. Some of them might have a disability that they're working through, things like that. So all of that, yes, it meets the requirements.
Oh, that's good. What was the name of the second one you said? Was it Wires? Yeah,
Wise Employment, WISE Employment.
Oh, Wise. Okay, cool. Awesome. Thanks. That does answer my questions well. Thanks for that, Christine.
No problems. Any other questions?
Yes, I have one last question, I think. Is it possible to get, does the placement agency have to sign a contract with ACAP or with myself? Is there a template that I can obtain so I know what they have to sign and I can talk to them about it?
Yep, so there's the electronic form in Sonia. So once you've got a placement, you fill in the form in Sonia. It comes through to us, we assess the information, and if it's approved, we then send an email to the agency because they will also get login details to Sonia, because they'll approve all of your forms and sign off on everything in Sonia.
Is it possible to get a copy of that contract before I actually, they'd want to see the contract before they actually commit to the placement? So because it's a bit different. I'm studying from Australia, but I'm getting a placement in Canada. It'll be handy for me to have that contract so they can read it through before they approve taking me on placement, so that they know what they're getting themselves into beforehand.
Yeah. The contract probably wouldn't be the best form or document to give any agencies at that stage, because the contract is more them saying they're taking you from here, this date to this date, and on placement you'll be doing X, Y, Z. We have a document called Information for Supervisors, and it's a two-sided document, and it has everything they need to know. What do I need to know as a supervisor? What are my responsibilities? We've included their benefits of having a student on placement.
Does that look like a brochure kind of thing?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, I've seen that. Okay, all right.
Yeah, so that's all you need to give them, and that goes through even the insurance, what students are covered while on placement. So that's all they should need at the beginning.
Yeah. Okay, and obviously with the insurance, that's again another thing that I need to talk to Ellen about, because, you know, I'm in Canada, so how does the insurance work with that on that level?
Yeah, so all students, regardless of what country, except for restricted areas, Canada's not, so any areas that are in a war zone or anything like that are not covered, but Canada is covered under our insurance, so that's fine.
Right, thank you.
No worries. Any other questions? No?
Yeah, sorry, it's Alex. I was just wondering how we contact Aaron. Do we contact the number that is written here, 82368058?
Yeah, that's not his direct number. That's our one of our placement coordinators in Sydney. Her name's Anita, and she handles general inquiries. Whereas if you're a Sydney student or an international student, Aaron will be your placement coordinator who works with you throughout the duration of your placement. You can contact him at the beginning via the student placement email address, and then once he replies, his direct number will be in that email.
Okay, and where is his email address? Where can I find that? I haven't got Sonia yet. I actually live in New Caledonia, and I'm in the same situation as the Canadian lady, so it's complicated.
Right. So just send an email to student placement.
Okay.
SYD, SYD, at acap.edu.au.
Okay. Thank you.
No worries. Any other questions?
Yes, I have a question.
Yeah.
Can you only access Sonia via the link that you want emailed, or what is the web address for Sonia itself?
It's a bit of a long one, so it needs to be emailed. But
Okay.
A link also just on the ACAP website. So
I couldn't find that.
If you go to, I think it's called, or actually if you just do a search for Sonia.
Okay, then you can get it like that.
Yeah, you can get it that way.
Yep.
Yep.
I tried that. I couldn't find her. Sorry.
Go on about the Sonia thing, and then I'll go back to my second question.
Yeah.
I tried to find Sonia, but I couldn't find her either, so I don't know where to find her.
Okay, just let me. All right. I'll share.
Someone's just said you can Google search it.
Yeah. I'll just show you. Can you see my screen still? If you go to current students, managing my course, and then over to placement. And then there we've got placement staff contacts, resources. This is the area with the brochure for information for agencies, member associations information, and then Sonia down the bottom there.
Okay.
And then
thank you.
Scroll down.
Someone's put the link in the chat too.
Oh, great. Thank you. Perfect.
And I have one more question.
Yep.
In relation to the number of hours spent at counselling, so I understand I'm in the graduate diploma, so I understand the 40 to 80 hours of face-to-face counselling. In terms of the 200 to 250 hours or whatever each course needs, how is that counted? Is it just counted as 8 hours a day, or is it counted minus all breaks? What are the specifics of that, or can that be found on Sonia?
Yeah, that is in Sonia, but I'll quickly answer the question here too.
Thank you.
It basically depends on the agency. Some agencies have students coming for 5 hours a day. Most will have an 8 hour day, but you only log 7 hours. That's if you have an hour lunch. So breaks, lunches are included as part of the 200 or 250. But generally, if you're starting your placement 2 weeks prior to term and continuing 1 day a week for 2 terms, you'll get your 250 hours of placement.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay.
Yes, sorry.
Yep.
Because I live in New Caledonia and I'm thinking of coming over to do my placement, is it possible to do it every day, like do 5 days a week? Like, so I can try and squash it down into a smaller time?
You can do that, but you still have to be on placement for the duration of both those terms. And the reason why is because of the 2 units you'll be enrolled in. At each session, you have what's called clinical supervision. Now, in the counselling field, clinical supervision is something that is required of all counsellors.
Sorry to interrupt you for 1 second. I'm not actually doing the counselling. I'm doing the applied social science. So I think mine might be a bit...
Bachelor of Applied Social Science, sort of same case. So it's not clinical supervision as such, but it is supervision in that they're working with you throughout your practice. They're assessing you throughout your practice. There is a mid-placement review scheduled within those terms. So there's a few things that are required, and that's why students need to be on placement to be successful in completing those units. So you're assessed on a number of things, on how you're presenting your work, if you're understanding the theory relating to practice, and just basically how you're doing on placement with regards to the mid-placement review. There are journals. You have to be blogging what it is you've learnt when you're on placement each week, things like that. So that's why, regardless of what course you're in, you have to be on placement for those 2 terms.
That is going to be very difficult because I have 3 children and I just don't see how I'm going to be able to do it. So maybe I'll have to talk to Aaron, because I can't sort of leave my home for 6 months.
So can you do a placement around where you're living 1 day a week?
I can think about it, but it's very different where I live in New Caledonia. It's just extremely, extremely different and hard, and they don't like taking on anybody, because they don't know ACAP, and anyway, I won't bore everybody, so I'll have to ring Aaron, I think, and have a long conversation.
Yeah, do that and he'll work it through with you.
Okay, thank you.
No worries. Okay.
One more question.
Yep, go ahead.
One more. Obviously, the time zone differences are very trying between Australia and Canada. So with the supervision and all that kind of stuff, would that be taken into account? Like, would it be made so that, because I looked at the timetable, on the internet, and it just seems like really like I'd be doing supervision in the middle of the night kind of thing here.
Yeah, we have sessions, I think, starting from 8 o'clock through to sessions finishing at 6:30. Starting at 6:30, finishing at 9:30 Sydney time. So I don't know how that transfers over in your time, but we do try to have a good range of sessions from the beginning of the day throughout to the end of the day. The other thing is the groups only allow a maximum of 5 students enrolled into each class, each group. And so we often have up to 40 different classes running. And so we should be able to find a time that works for you within that number of groups. Okay.
Yeah. The last question I have is I tried to enroll at this term for Project 1. And when I started the term, the educator said to me, no, well, you have to be in placement while you're doing Project 1. So whilst I'm in placement, I do Project 1 on the first term and Supervision 1, and then on the second term, Supervision 2. Is that right?
Yeah, that is the recommended sequence because Project 1 part of the assessment requirements is to do a project in a workplace. So it just makes sense for students to do project one while on placement. You can do both at the same time.
Okay. All right. Yep. Thank you.
Okay.
Christine, I have one more question. So I already have been accredited for student placement 1. So would I do my second placement? Would that just be a one-term thing?
If you've got credit, you'd most likely have credit for the second unit, because the first unit is the unit where the fundamentals of counselling, how it works, all of that is set up, the introduction, etc. Whereas the second unit is a continuation. So if you have credit for the second unit and you're only doing the first unit, then yes, it's just one term of placement.
Okay, beautiful.
Yeah, but just double check that you do have that credit. Okay.
Yeah, I definitely do. I did it under the applied social science, and they definitely gave it to me.
Okay.
Didn't count any 46 hours of counselling though, even though I was running those kind of groups in job services that you were talking about as my placement. But yeah, I still have to do the 46 hours of face-to-face.
Yeah. But with any transitions, a lot of the time, especially because it was a first placement, those counselling hours wouldn't have transferred across. And then also with doing this unit, you have to be working with counselling clients or doing group work to present in supervision. But the more experience you get while you're under ACAP supervision, the better it is for you.
Yeah.
Okay, well, the session is being recorded, so I'll send that out to everyone if you want to have another listen to it. And then just read through the information in Sonia, and if you have any questions, contact your placement coordinator. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for coming today. Thank you, and bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.